Um, and so the material we're going to be covering tonight is from the textbook, chapter 2, section 2. It's called The Atonement as a Defense. This is a foundational topic in the Course of Miracles, that you recognize the atonement is your point of safety, and that it's unique amongst all defense systems that otherwise exist. We'll go over that. All this will be more clear, hopefully, as by the time we finish. So here's an outline of what we're talking about tonight. We're going to be talking about the things that are in bold will be specifically addressed. So Noel, we will not be talking about the entire atonement plan. We will be talking about aspects of it as related to the defense of truth within you. So we're going to talk about some parts of the atonement, particularly, as we just said, your ability to be invulnerable with the atonement. And the question will always come up, how do I apply this to myself? And so we will talk about that as well. And see that the atonement is a part of your learning journey. It's a lesson in perception and in healing your perception. We'll also talk about, as we mentioned a moment ago, the atonement in relationship to time, how it fits into the plan for time. And the opposite of atonement is the separated state of mind. And we're not going to be talking about that in any detail. But what happens in the separated state of mind is the ego fearful mind puts up its emotional and psychological armor to defend itself because it's afraid. And so these are psychological defense mechanisms. These are studied in psychology. And they hold the ego structure rigidly in place. And so what we will be talking about in more detail is the need to feel safe and secure. You can never feel at peace until you first resolve these issues about safety and security. We'll look at the nature of defenses, that they're two-edged in nature. They have a double purpose. You got to watch out for that. And we talked yesterday in what was the title of yesterday's? The Origin of Separation. We talked about projection and how that can be used to defend error, or projection can be used to affirm truth. This is an example of the double-edged nature of defenses. They can be used for illusions or for truth. So we won't be reviewing that again today, but the example we will be reviewing is how denial can be used that way. Denial can be used to hide the truth, or the proper use of denial can be to deny errors. A double-edged nature. We'll go into that. So having said all that, we are looking at the atonement as a defense mechanism, and know that there are dozens of defense mechanisms, and each one of them can be used in service of protection or in service of attack. So they can be likened to a two-edged sword. So enough for chatter. Let's get into the reading. David, thank you for being available for reading, and welcome for all of you that were just now arriving.
You can do anything I ask. I have asked you to perform miracles and have made it clear that miracles are natural, corrective, healing, and universal. There is nothing they cannot do, but they cannot be performed in the spirit of doubt or fear, When you are afraid of anything, you are acknowledging its power to hurt you. Remember that where your heart is, there is your treasure also. You believe in what you value. If you are afraid, you will inevitably value wrongly. And by endowing all thoughts with equal power, will inevitably destroy peace. That is why the Bible speaks of the peace of God, which passeth understanding.
Mm-hmm. So we have to deal with fear first, because you cannot reach the point where you function adequately as a miracle worker while harboring the spirit of doubt or fear. It interferes with the healing process. So we have to deal with clear the fear first. So let's understand from Holy Spirit's point of view, what is fear or doubt? Well, anytime, and this can be just a very brief thought that crosses your mind or a brief feeling, when you're afraid of anything, what you believe is that it has power over you, power to hurt you. It's a concern, it's a doubt that I can be hurt by this. This is an error. This is an illusion, and we'll help to understand that as we go forward. So the question becomes, how do we unlock that grip? And it is said right here. It's where your heart is. So the solution in the Course of Miracles is we'll become very clear on our purpose, our intention, where our heart is, so that even though we may have a fearful thought, we know where our heart is, and that will help shift our power away from fear and back into our purpose, our life-giving purpose as a miracle worker. The problem is when you are afraid, you will place your faith and value in those fearful thoughts and feelings. And this is the error. By giving every thought that occurs to your mind equal power, you inevitably drive off into the ditch and find yourself trapped in a depression of sorts, that where fearful thoughts seem as meaningful and important as loving and healing thoughts. This is total confusion. This is what we're here to rectify. And we emphasized in section 2.1, you need to learn to distinguish error from the truth, illusions from reality, so that you can withdraw power from illusions and place them completely in the truth. This should not be on. So more will be said about all this, but suffice it to say, the untrained mind, every thought and feeling that comes up, it regards as useful. It pays attention to them. What we're going to learn is that that's an error to withdraw our attention from fear and doubt and judgments and guilt, and instead willfully and consciously apply our attention to the leadings of the Holy Spirit. So that's a mouthful here. Comments or questions before we go on? All right. David?
This piece is totally incapable of being shaken by errors of any kind. It denies the ability of anything not of God to affect you. This is the proper use of denial. It is not used to hide anything, but to correct error. It brings all error into the light, and since error and darkness are the same, it corrects error automatically. True denial is a powerful protective device. You can and should deny any belief that error can hurt you. This kind of denial is not a concealment, but a correction. Your right mind depends on it. Denial of error is a strong defense of truth, but denial of truth results in miscreation, the projections of the ego. In the service of the right mind, the denial of error frees the mind and reestablishes the freedom of the will. When the will is really free, it cannot miscreate because it recognizes only truth.
Okay, so this is going to be our working example of the one of the psychological defenses, of which we said there were many, but we're going to use this today as our example, is denial. And many of you are already familiar and have encountered the use of denial to conceal the truth. We're all familiar with that. What you may not have, I doubt that you were taught, is that there's another edge to denial, and that's what we will refer to as the proper use of denial. Every defense has this property, can be used against the truth or for the truth. And so the proper use of denial is related to your sense of invulnerability. So this is a powerful protective device, and it is literal that you can and should deny any belief that these thoughts of fear and the feelings of doubt and guilt can actually harm you. We need to learn to deny that and withdraw our faith and power from guilt and judgment and fear and doubt, et cetera, et cetera. So this is a way of correcting your mind to bring you out of the tendency to veer off into the ditch and back onto the road where you're safe. Literally, your right mind depends on you learning to do this and practicing this. Without it, and we keep driving. Okay, I used a metaphor yesterday for some of you might not have been here. If you're driving down a country road, oftentimes there's no underground water, stormwater drainage there. So there are ditches on either side of the road where the rainwater will fill up in. And psychologically and mentally, what happens is your mind will veer off the road and into the ditch. And you've all been there before, so you know what I'm talking about. And what we need to do is train our mind to stay on the road of truth. And if we start to veer into the ditch, quickly correct so that we stay on the road where it's safe. Well, the proper use of denial is one learning tool so that we affirm the truth and deny the error. It's a strong defense of truth, and it frees your mind of the error and reestablishes your higher power, your higher self within you. It reestablishes the freedom of your will. So let's take a comment. Heidi, thank you for being patient.
What happens when, like I myself, I'm understanding the course and I understand denial and atonement, and I get all this and I try to stay out of that ditch. But what happens when somebody else we know that are very close with is in that ditch and they know nothing about God or the course? It causes me to go in that ditch. and I don't know how to stay out of that ditch for others that are sick and suffering.
Yeah, this is a topic of conversation, Heidi. So your question is well timed. As a matter of fact, Julie and I were referring to this even before the class began tonight. We will get to that, but the issue, Heidi, realize if you're going off the road because somebody else is off the road, your attention's in the your attention is not in the right place. It's just like anything when you're driving, Heidi. If you stare at the side of the road, you will move towards it. So the practice that we will learn here is to reaffirm your inward being, the truth of who you are, and that's where the power of healing lies.
But that's just the power of healing within, correct?
Yes, yes.
So
Well,
how do you get the power out to heal others?
that's the right question. And it's going to be addressed later today.
Okay, thank you.
Yes. Matter of fact, let's broadly speak about it. Your journey in A Course in Miracles begins with your not understanding anything about miracles and being very afraid. Phase one is we help you to manage your own fears so that you don't get dragged into the ditch. Phase two is you begin believing in miracles and honoring miracles, but you have low confidence in that and your ability to function that way. With more experience, you become a confident miracle worker and you're not shaken by the behaviors of others, and the power within you extends or is projected out to them so that they too benefit from your inner radiance of the presence of healing and atonement within you. So that's an abstraction, what I just said there, Heidi, but if we don't cover it in detail by the end of the class, you remind me.
And can that happen if they don't hear or understand our words?
Yes. Yes.
Okay.
It's doesn't depend on the form. It does depend on your maintaining undivided consciousness of your inner radiance.
Thank you.
Whenever we refer to inner radiance, Heidi, that's the clue of what we're talking about here. Inner radiance will bring healing to others. As a matter of fact, oh, all right. There's a paragraph in the previous section that speaks right to that. We'll have to get to that. Let's go on. David?
You can defend truth as well as error. The means are easier to understand after the value of the goal is firmly established. It is a question of what it is for. Everyone defends his treasure and will do so automatically. The real questions are, what do you treasure and how much do you treasure it? Once you have learned to consider these questions and to bring them into all your actions, you will have little difficulty in clarifying the means. The means are available whenever you ask. You can, however, save time if you do not protract this step unduly. The correct focus will shorten it immeasurably.
Mm-hmm. This is one of the most commonly asked questions. Is after we hear about this healing power, people will say, but how do I access this in my own life? And of course, this, tell me how. Well, the answer in the Course is that you should not be focusing first on the how, but you should be focusing on your purpose, your intention. What is it that you're about? What is your function? Why are you here? What is it that you treasure, and how much do you treasure it? So you have to first determine what direction do you want to go in your life. And that has to begin there. And once you've learned to consider that question and bring it into all your actions, the how will be given to you by the Holy Spirit. You will have little difficulty in clarifying the how. The how will be available to you when you ask the Holy Spirit. So there's no point in asking how until first you become resolute in your own mind, devoted to the direction, and then you ask the Holy Spirit. In each given situation, you ask Holy Spirit, what would you have me do? And you'll be directed in that moment. So the how is easy, and you can save time if you do not protract this, so that your focus should be on, what am I doing here with my life? What is it about? What is my level of commitment to miracles? And what does it mean to me? You get really clear on that the goal that this course would invite you to become a miracle worker. You get solidly clear on that. And that sense of higher purpose will make the understanding of what to do in any given moment easy. Heidi?
Yeah, I'm sorry to speak again. I know that I'm not up to where most of you guys are up to in the course, but I do want to share the experience that I just experienced. I was able to get to that point a few weeks ago where I figured out my purpose was to be of love and light, and to spread the word of love and light. And I received the miracle of being cancer free. And I practiced so hard being of love and light, and not, no matter what, even if I had cancer, didn't have cancer. And that's the miracle that I received. And so I just wanted to express to everybody how it just worked in my life. It was amazing. So I want to thank you all for leading me there and being a part of it. That's all.
Yeah, Heidi, thank you. So powerful testimony. David, I saw your hand up.
Well, I was just going to comment about the ditch, and we were talking about driving and going through life, and sometimes people get into the ditch.
Yeah.
And what I've come to understand from this course is, let's call the ditch the darkness.
Yes.
And let's call the person on the road the light.
Yes.
And so the goal here is, if I notice my brother in the ditch, and we have some therapists on this call too, so I know that they'll understand that, I have to take my light to that person, to that ditch situation, and illuminate the situation. And what you took the words out of my mouth about saying, ask the Holy Spirit, what should I do? And also asking the Holy Spirit, of course, what do you want me to say, and to whom?
Yes.
And that's, in a relationship, it's easy for one person to be more in the ditch than the other. And we talk about in this course, he who is in his high of the two in the higher self at that moment,
Mm-hmm.
has to extend to his brother so that both can get back on the road.
Yes. Yes.
So I don't know if that helps Heidi in terms of what you were asking about too.
Mhm. No, I
Yeah,
find-
that was perfect. Thank you.
Yes. Yeah, another way, yeah, there are many ways of expressing that we are here to be light bearers, to help others, because we know what it's like to be in darkness ourselves. And we should be truly joyful at being able to serve, to help others find the light themselves. Let's go on.
The atonement is the only defense that cannot be used destructively because it is not a device you made. The atonement principle was in effect long before the atonement began. The principle was love, and the atonement was an act of love. Acts were not necessary before the separation because belief in space and time did not exist. It was only after the separation that the atonement and the conditions necessary for its fulfillment were planned. Then a defense so splendid was needed that it could not be misused, although it could be refused. Refusal could not, however, turn it into a weapon of attack, which is the inherent characteristic of other defenses. The atonement thus becomes the only defense that is not a two-edged sword. It can only heal.
Okay, so there's a couple themes that are going on here. We said that we would speak about the atonement in reference to time. So the atonement is a heavenly gift. It's a principle of love that was in effect before time began. And when the separation occurred in time, the atonement is a plan that spans the entire remainder of time to bring everyone back to the original state of loving union with creation. So it's a plan that encompasses everyone throughout all of time. Well, once the separation occurred, it became necessary to put that plan into effect, and the conditions necessary for its fulfillment were planned to bring everyone back to a remembrance of who they are at the moment of creation. Requires preliminary steps be accomplished, which are the conditions necessary for the fulfillment. And the preliminary step that we're focusing on in this chapter is your own management of fear in your own life. Because until we address that, it really doesn't matter if we talked about lofty spirituality, if you're still overwhelmed by the darkness that your own mind produces on a daily basis. It's a necessary condition for fulfillment of the atonement. So the answer was baked in there. It was to give you a defense that was so splendid that it could not even be misused, even though you were not a master in using it. It could not be misused. So the atonement becomes a means of protecting your mind, keeping you safe, secure, and at peace. And that's what other defenses seem to do. But other defenses have the ability to quickly change and become weapons of attack. And that, unless you are really on the top of your game, you might slip into that darkness and start using the very thing that was using for your protection, using it against others. So The atonement becomes this unique defense. It's the only defense that is not two-edged. It can only be used to heal and bring love, to keep you safe and protected. It's a divine gift, has unique properties. And so, Noel, we make a commitment to learning this atonement process. It might take a year or longer, but we are working with a divine gift that is planned for all of time and for everybody. It contains all that we need to return back to the original state of divine union. And we're only going to look at aspects of it tonight. We're only looking at it in a narrow context of how it can keep you feeling safe, even when there are, quote, air quotes, temptations to veer into the darkness. Noel?
Today, I had a conversation with a woman who's a nurse by profession, and she went into a specialty that she herself suffers from. It's well, I won't go into the details, but it's a kind of an all-encompassing illness that the medical profession doesn't recognize very much. And that's one of her missions, purposes, to bring better awareness and funding to it. I was incensed at what she told me, and I was very empathetic towards her and very admiring of her for persisting in her own research in spite of everything. Later, I realized maybe I was supporting the material view of things. Usually when someone tells me something physical, I come back with some kind of even mild metaphysical rejoinder.
Mm-hmm.
This time I didn't at all.
Mm-hmm.
And David, you supplied something for me just before. I mean, it should be basic, and we've been talking about it. Ask the Holy Spirit what to do. And I recognize now that I'm going to give her a couple of mild metaphysical things. I'll test the water and see how she responds, because I've had previous experience with many medically oriented people and professionals who nevertheless believe in what we are talking about in one way or another.
Okay. And keep asking the Holy Spirit for what to do in any given moment. So I would say you have a strategy or a plan for how to approach her. And in the moment, new ideas may emerge in your mind that you hadn't considered before. And part of this journey is learning to trust those surprising or unexpected thoughts that occur in the moment of engagement when we're there to help other people. Okay, so now for ourselves, we have identified a tool, a plan called the Atonement, which is unique. It can only heal. So let's look at it a little bit more.
The atonement was built into the space-time belief to set a limit on the need for the belief itself, and ultimately to make learning complete. The atonement is the final lesson. Learning itself, like the classrooms in which it occurs, is temporary. The ability to learn has no value when change is no longer necessary. The eternally creative have nothing to learn. You can learn to improve your perceptions and can become a better and better learner. This will bring you into closer and closer accord with the sonship. But the sonship itself is a perfect creation, and perfection is not a matter of degree. Only while there is a belief in differences is learning meaningful.
So we're speaking here in large cosmic terms of space and time. And we said that the atonement is a solution, an act of love that comes from beyond space and time, and then is being applied within space and time. And its purpose is to bring learning to a completion and bring time to an end. The atonement is a learning journey that will bring the entire sonship to the end of this learning cycle that we think of as reality. But we're being told we think of being separate and confused and not understanding and all that as being part of reality. Reality, however, from the point of view of heaven, doesn't even involve learning at all. It's a complete knowledge. It's a perfect communication. Remember, we looked at those 7 layers of communication in a previous class? It's the fulfillment of all these channels of communication are open and functioning as they should. It's beyond learning. It's knowing. So in heaven, those who have fulfilled all aspects of the atonement have nothing to learn. But those of us who are still in the midst of it have plenty to learn. So, what shall we do? Well, this is where we're moving towards this final phase of the atonement. That's our direction. And along the way, we're learning to improve our perceptions from focusing on the dark, the judgments, the guilt, the past, the anxiety of the future, the self-criticism and condemnation, learning to move our focus away from that and into the perceptions that are offered to us by the Holy Spirit. And with this Course of Miracles, as you go, you'll become a better learner. Your ability to learn those things will increase, and it will bring you into the mind of the sonship, where your thinking will become in closer and closer accord with the mind of the sonship, which is represented by the Holy Spirit, who has this perfect perception there. So our minds are moving in that direction. And we are going to be at this learning for a while, but make the goal clear. Where is your treasure? Where your heart is, there your treasure will be also. Your treasure is to return to the state of perfect union with all creation. And learning is the means that are given us to get there. But not learning, self-directed learning, learning directed by the Holy Spirit. Okay, Heidi, you had your hand up.
Yeah, I'm sorry. I just
don't apologize.
to get straight.
Yeah.
Atoning is not something I do, it's what I receive.
It's both. It's both. So
When it talks about atonement in this chapter,
yes,
it's not talking about me atoning. It's talking about me receiving atonement, correct?
So, Heidi, it's understandable. Most of us want to try to understand this word, this symbol atonement, in some kind of sense that we can memorize a line and say, well, that's what it is. And that's perfectly understandable. However, Heidi, what I'm telling you is this is a gift from heaven that spans all of time and is for every single person in creation. You can't minimize it to one little thing. So, Heidi, it includes everybody, every day, every hour. We are in a process of learning to atone. So it has multiple dimensions, but its purpose is always to help us heal. So yes, you can atone, which is you're letting go of fear and turning to open arm towards the Holy Spirit. And yes, there is a bigger process where we are all moving in the direction of atonement. So it has, unfortunately, my dear, it has many dimensions that cannot be easily simplified into a one-liner.
Okay, thank you.
Kathy?
So the last sentence really blew me away, but then when I thought about it, I was like, of course, but then I was like, well, how does this work? And then I thought, so it's in the sentence above it. So correct me if I'm wrong. If I perceive everyone else as perfect creation, including myself, then there are no differences, and learning is over, if you will. So am I kind of on the right path?
I think so.
there?
I think so. So
Okay.
let's start back from the error-minded state, Kathy, and then work our way up there. So the error-minded state might say, oh, there are some people that really are advanced in the course and other people that are brand new, and they're different, right? We would say that. So we make some kind of assessment or judgment. Where did that come from? That's our own opinions about how far someone has progressed. Well, what the Course would say, our function is not to judge. But one thing that we know is that all of us were created by the Creator as perfect equals. And yes, as we move through time, you might develop abilities in accounting that other people don't have. So that's fine. Or you might develop an understanding that other people don't have in time. But that does not change in any way our nature of our being, which was created equal and perfect and invulnerable, unblemished forever. So in reality, Kathy, I see it as level confusion. People, and any judgment that we're unequal is looking at another level and not looking at our core inner divinity and trying to take those other levels and make a narrative into it and you can see where it goes. It just goes into further judgment.
Yeah, and it kind of speaks to a little bit to what Heidi had first asked, like if we're noticing, but we're not getting involved in the story of the other person, we're just noticing our thoughts and what's going on without judgment, then that would be as well okay, right? That's part of not judging and loving the other person.
Yes.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, I think Noelle made a reference to it. She said the woman was telling her story, but with Noelle could have easily commented, but she withheld her comment. And a big part of this is just learning that skill, not to give equal value to every thought or feeling that occurs to your mind. but to be asking the Holy Spirit, what is it you would have me share? What is it you would have me say, and to whom? Heather, do you have a comment? I saw you said something on the chat.
No, I'm sorry, that was meant for Heidi.
Okay, all right, no problem. I understand. Julie?
Yeah, it seems like what everybody's discussing here is a really good example of the paragraph that says you can learn to improve your perceptions. So we can learn this. We can learn that by watching what the thoughts are that are coming up. They're going to come up. The thoughts come up. There they come, you know, and we can have directed thoughts where we're, you know, trying to think positive things and things like that. But then we have all these other random thoughts. And so I feel like that's what this paragraph is telling us to do, is that we can actually do this. We can improve our perceptions, and we can keep becoming better and better learners by just watching what those thoughts are that are coming up. And I don't even think we need to choose. I don't know that we need to choose one or the other or whatever. Probably not acting on a lot of them is the best way to go. And then asking Holy Spirit, or more than that, by the watching of the thoughts that are coming up, I feel like we're already inviting Holy Spirit to help us, like help us choose, like
Yes.
give
Yes,
us that
we are.
advice.
Here we are.
Yeah. Can I tell one little funny story about the things that we were talking about before? I'll make it really quick.
All right.
There was a Course in Miracles teacher who had come to Unity. This is years back, and he had written a book, and he was talking about his book and everything. He was so devastated that I guess the final editor or somebody in this book, on the back flap where they wrote his bio, had said he was a master teacher of Course in Miracles. And he was so upset by them making, and he, you know, he faulted himself. I should have, you know, reread it one more time or whatever. But he was so upset at the fact that they had put the word master in front of teacher, because it wasn't like he just, you know, there's not a master, that he's like, I'm a learner, I'm a teacher, you're a teacher. And he really went kind of bananas over it. So I ended up buying his book, and he had even gone to the point of putting a little bookmark in there explaining the word master should not be in front of my name. I'm a learner and a teacher just like you. And it was kind of cute because he had them printed up, and he had them put in every single book. So anyway, I just thought I'd share that as.
Is that John?
Yeah, as John.
Yeah, yeah.
Were you that you might have been there?
Yeah, I think I was there. Yeah.
Yeah.
Thank you. Okay, great. Thanks for sharing that. Let's go on.
Evolution is a process in which you seem to proceed from one degree to the next. You correct your previous missteps by stepping forward. This process is actually incomprehensible in temporal terms because you return as you go forward. The atonement is the device by which you can free yourself from the past as you go ahead. It undoes your past errors, thus making it unnecessary for you to keep retracing your steps without advancing to your return. In this sense, the atonement saves time, but like the miracle it serves, does not abolish it. As long as there is a need for atonement, there is need for time. But the atonement as a completed plan has a unique relationship to time. Until the atonement is complete, its various phases will proceed in time, but the whole atonement stands at time's end. At that point, the bridge of return has been built.
Mhm. So there's a number of abstract references here, but remember, the atonement is an experience that surrounds you every hour of your life. So how does this apply? Maybe you can identify with this. You make a mistake, you fall in the ditch. You get out of the ditch, you make the same mistake again, you fall in the ditch. You get out of the ditch, you make the same mistake again, you fall in the ditch. That's not progress. That's not learning. That's being stuck. And I know for a fact we could talk hours about how we all have done the behavior that we're just talking about, fallen back into the same old ditch. Okay, so the creator realized that we needed a solution here. And so the atonement is, and so falling back in the ditch in this sense is repeating past mistakes again and again, obsessive compulsive behaviors that return you back to the point you were before. And so the atonement is a learning device which can free you from the past and allow you to move forward. This is vital. Otherwise, we remain stuck. We grow older physically, but fail to advance in our learning because we keep repeating mistakes of the past. So a solution was needed. The atonement is a heavenly gift to help with that. You don't have to understand all the mechanics of it because we're talking about time and space, but you do need to make room for it in your heart and mind so that you treasure it. For where your heart is, there will your treasure be also. And once you've determined that that is your heart set upon that, the means for how you should proceed each day will be given to you if you ask. And so this is another way of saying by not repeating the mistakes of the past, we allows us to advance forward and not return back to the point of our previous mistake. And now multiply that times billions of people getting stuck and repeating the same mistakes of the past. I don't want to make a comment on the human experience, but the things that were talked about thousands of years ago, we still haven't mastered those lessons yet. To love your neighbor as you love yourself, to judge not that you be not judged. We're still needing to learn things that have been taught long ago. So the atonement, the creator sees the big plan and has this goal. This is an image now. This is a vision that we're talking about. It's on the spiritual plane. At the end of time, there's a state of completion called the completion of the atonement. And it represents the ideal state where all beings have awakened and returned to the original state of union with all creation and with the creator. So it's the atonement as a completed state can be found at the end of time. Until then, however, you can have a vision before that. You can have a revelation of the atonement in advance of the completion of time. And that's why we talk about these things, so that your mind will open up. The ego certainly does not want to hear this, so that you lower the barriers that the ego utilizes, the barriers to love's presence. You lower those in your mind and allow a new perception. As Julie said, it's a new perception that you can learn, a perception of an idea of being restored to your true nature. All creation is joined in this process of bringing the atonement about for everyone as a completed plan that's underway already, but not yet complete. So my own metaphor, Heather will laugh at this. I use the metaphor that we've got a construction project going on. And it's not so pretty during construction, but the completed plan is incredible. It's beautiful, temple to all creation. But during the construction phase, there's work to be done, there's learning to be done and growing to be done. We don't want to delay that in our own advancement through it. We don't want to delay that. We want to keep moving forward. How do we do that, David?
The atonement is a total commitment. You may still think this is associated with loss, a mistake all the separated sons of God make in one way or another. It is hard to believe a defense that cannot attack is the best defense. This is what is meant by the meek shall inherit the earth. They will literally take it over because of their strength. A two-way defense is inherently weak precisely because it has two edges and can be turned against you very unexpectedly. This possibility cannot be controlled except by miracles. The miracle turns the defense of atonement to your real protection. And as you become more and more secure, you assume your natural talent of protecting others, knowing yourself as both a brother and a son.
Oh, wow, there's a whole lot here. So first of all, let's just deal with these last two lines, last sentence. Heidi, this speaks to your question. So we're talking about miracle workers who are practicing the atonement as their safety point, as think of it as a bubble of holiness that makes you safe and at peace under all external conditions. And as you become more and more secure with it, then your natural talents at invoking miracles and helping others comes forth, so that you become more effective in functioning to, as David said, to extend your light to them. Become more secure in that. The ego wants you never to be secure in extending light to others. So we have to scuttle all that ego talk and fear and judgment so that our mind is clear to function in this manner. And yes, we become more and more secure with experience. You go first from a state of doubt to a state of faith, and later on move towards a sense of certainty and security where you doubt not, where you do not become faithless under difficult situations, but you trust that there is no order of difficulty in miracles. Become secure with that. And David, it's interesting, it says you know yourself as both a brother and a son. You become clear on who you are in relationship to others and as well as in relationship to the Creator. So I think the ego fears this word, total commitment. But I think any mother knows what it's like to be totally committed to raising your child. So this is not unseen. People can be, are on this world, are committed, a total commitment. This is about your treasure. What is it that you're going to do with yourself as you remain in time? What is your goal? Ask, what is your life about? And once you get clear on that, the daily step-by-step details will be given you if you ask. Noelle?
I really like the last line, 2 lines there. You assume your natural talent of protecting others. And that, to me, also ties in with total commitment. If it's natural, we're not striving, trying so much. We just have, to me, it means yielding to the natural talent that I was given.
I love it. Noelle, thank you. Well said. To contextualize this, the ego would prefer to remain in control and interfere with all this. Once we relinquish our power of our mind, giving it to the ego's notions, then what is natural comes forth. Your inner radiance of your being, the way you were created, comes forth. And so the implications, I know that you get this, Noelle. The implications are we have not been acting naturally under the guidance of the ego. We've been acting insanely, and relinquishing that allows our natural being, loving being to come forth. And that brings about miracles. Thank you. All right. There's a paragraph in the next section that I think builds on everything we've just said. So we're going to read part of paragraph 1 in the next section. I'm not going to go into it beyond paragraph 1.
The atonement can only be accepted within you.
Oh, sorry, David. Hang on a second. Can you open your mic again?
We ready?
Yeah, go ahead.
The atonement can only be accepted within you by releasing the inner light. Since the separation, defenses have been used almost entirely to defend against the atonement and thus maintain the separation. This is generally seen as a need to protect the body. The many body fantasies in which minds engage arise from the distorted belief that the body can be used as a means for attaining atonement. Perceiving the body as a temple is only the first step in correcting this distortion, because it alters only part of it. It does recognize that atonement in physical terms is impossible.
So we read in chapter 1 the upside down version of ego perception, where everything is backwards and there are shallow roots attached to try to maintain this upside down state. Well, here's an example. Since the separation, the psychological defense mechanisms have been used almost entirely against the atonement. It's completely upside down. And thus, and by the way, these are largely unconscious. So you didn't know that you were doing it. This is what unconsciousness is about. And thus, practicing those defenses against the atonement maintains the separation. And it can have many forms, but one of them is a need to, whenever you feel threatened, you want to seek safety. And that's very commonly expressed as a need to protect your body. And so then we get level confusion. What is really an issue in the mind of not being certain about your being? Now that confusion gets displaced onto how you feel about your body. And so this is an example of being upside down. And this is a part of the bigger conversation we call level confusion, taking principles that apply to one aspect of your life and projecting them onto other levels in your life. It does not recognize that the atonement, the restoration of all things to the creator and the original state, the atonement is impossible in physical terms. We're not talking about restoring your body to the original state of creation. Your bodies aren't making it there. It's but your consciousness, your free will, your inner being will be there. So the bigger issue that we did not handle today is other defenses, and we have a few minutes, so we're going to cover them in the next few minutes. Noelle?
Perceiving the body as a temple. Would you explain how that, and it seems like that's contradictory to not, but you can't reach atonement or practice it in physical terms.
Right. I'm not trying to avoid your question, Noelle. This paragraph is taken from the next section, which is entirely directed towards what you're asking. So please tune in on Saturday for perceiving your body as a temple. That whole section addresses that. So we'll save that for that meeting. So what is not been discussed here, and this is supplemental material that is not necessary to the reading that we did today, but we said that there's lots of defenses. The ego will use anything to protect its control in your mind, to keep its place in your mind. Miracles mentions many of them. Many of them also are reported within the psychological literature. All of them can be used to protect the truth in your mind, but as we read, you can quickly use that same defense mechanism as a weapon of attack, a weapon of assault. And so that's tricky. You have to really be further along in your program to be able to use a defense and not use it also as a weapon of assault. The beauty of it is we simplified it as this: the atonement is the one defense that can be used only to help. All right, so that's really the focus of our topic today. But I just wanted you to know that all of us have participated in a framework of ego thinking that seems to define everything for us. And all the things that it defines are used as armor to keep that belief system in place, to defend your false identity within that thought system. And this is not a complete list. This is, these are certainly many of the major ones, but there are other ones. So we're not going to talk about that in detail today, but I want you to know it's there. What I thought we would do with our few remaining moments is go over a review of some of the things that we said. When you're afraid of anything, it's your mind being used improperly. It's your mind moving into the darkness, the ditch. And it's the power of your mind believing that these external things can change your being, your nature. And so your mind gives power to the fearful thoughts, which will then destroy your peace. And the question should become, how can we ever learn to feel safe and secure if we're doing that? And the truth is that we can't as long as we continue to give power to fearful thoughts. So in comes the solution from heaven. The atonement is your perfect defense. It's one that can't be used destructively. It's the only defense system that is not made in time. It was made in heaven. And so it can't be used to hurt. The example of the many defense systems we showed a moment ago, the example that was talked about today is denial. That denial can be used to deny the truth, but it also can be used to deny error. And that's what we refer to as true denial. The proper use of denial is when your mind, it is inevitable that your mind is going to start to veer off equilibrium. And what this program will teach you is to recognize that. Pay attention to how you feel, because it immediately starts to feel anxious and uncertain and unnerving and mildly fearful. When you do that, you have to learn to deny the error, and that the error cannot change who you are. It's not a threat to your holiness, to your being. So this is a way in which we learn to correct the error in our mind. And once it's free, then free will can operate. Your right mind depends on your learning to do this, to deny the error and to affirm the truth. We will talk about that much more as we go forward. And finally, talk about repeating errors again and again, still making the same mistake for years. The atonement frees you from that looping by undoing your past errors. Call it a gift from heaven. So you're no longer guilty. You're no longer guilty of past errors. You're no longer bound to repeating the past. You're no longer stuck in that old mode. It's a gift that frees you to move forward towards completion. Okay, one more thing. There's many. We can reformat these ideas in dozens of ways. Okay, there's many ways. We can use pictures. It goes on and on and on. I'm not claiming that the formatting here or the framing is in any way special. It's intended to help learn the primary differences. And I think we said much of this already. We have, the atonement. What does the atonement defend? You know, the easy answer you might say is it defends you. Well, what do we mean by you? Well, what we really mean is the you that God created. The atonement defends your inner self against believing that your mind is separate from source, separate from love, separate. It helps keep your mind in a proper state of balance and equilibrium, where your inner self can then express through your mind. This is how you become right-minded, and as we read earlier, able to help others through being in your own right-minded state. And as we said, you can then resume your natural talent of protecting others. So that was a overview of the atonement as a defense. We will be looking at other aspects of this heavenly plan to bring all the sonship back home. On next meeting is next Saturday, where we'll be looking at a symbol that Noel asked for more clarification on. It has two aspects. One, the outer aspect of the body is a temple, and it has another aspect that is of our inner being. It's the idea of a state within you where you meet your creator. It's called the altar to God. And so we'll be going over that in Saturday's Saturday's meeting. I hope you can join us for that. Well, that's all we're going to do. Let's see, did I turn off? No, I didn't stop sharing. I meant to stop sharing here so that we can see everybody's shining faces here. I want to thank David for reading, and thank you all for your attention. I know that was a lot. Go over your notes and bring questions with you to class next time. Thank you for your questions and your comments and your sharing. It always adds so much to the meeting here. Namaste.
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 Thanks, Jonica.
Good night, all.
Night, everybody.
Good night, everybody.